Now let's get to know the chess pieces. This is the king. This is the queen, the rook, the bishop, the knight, and the pawn. Now let's learn the values of all the pieces. The pawn is the weakest piece on the chessboard. It's also known as the unit of value in chess. So the strengths of the other pieces are measured by the number of pawns that they're worth. The knight is worth around 3 pawns. The bishop is also worth around 3 pawns. We'll talk more about this later. The knight and the bishop are both worth around 3 pawns, but they move very, very differently. In some positions, knights are stronger. In other positions, bishops are stronger. And you'll learn about these nuances in a little bit. For now, knight 3 pawns, bishop 3 pawns. The rook is a powerful piece. It's worth 5 pawns. The queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. It's worth 9 pawns. The king doesn't really have a value that can be measured with pawns because the king, though not so powerful, cannot be lost. The aim of the game is to capture the enemy king. So your king has infinite value, although not all that much power. Now that you know all the chess pieces, let's learn how to set up the board. Remember, both sides begin with a light square in the lower right-hand corner. So let's say you're white. The rooks go in the corners. Next to them come the knights. Then the bishops, and finally the queen and king. An easy way to remember what color square to put your king and queen on is that the king always begins on the opposite color of what it is. So if it's a white king, it begins on a dark square. If it's a black king, it begins on a light square. Now the pawns cover the entire second rank. You begin with 8 pawns. Remember, I said the pawn is the least valuable piece, but you have a lot of them. So here we see white's setup. The rooks are in the corners. The white king is beginning on a dark square. The queen is beginning on the same color as she is. She's a white queen beginning on a light square. Bishops and knights, and the pawns cover the entire second rank. Now for black, it's the same. The pawns cover the entire 7th rank. The rooks go in the corners. The black king begins on a light square. The black queen begins on a dark square. Remember, the king always begins on the opposite color square of what it is, and the queen begins on the same color. So the black queen begins on a dark square, the black king begins on a light square. Then come the knights and the bishops. Now it's your turn. Click on each piece and drag it to its setup position on the board. Way to go!